From the headquarters of Telesa English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Emike Omoli. Welcome. A 7.1 magnitude earthquake has hit the border between Peru and Brazil. It happened west of the Peruvian city of Iberia and about northwest of Puerto Maldonado. Possible victims or damages are still to be reported. The quake has also been felt in Bolivia and Chile. Different tremors occurred this week in the Pacific area and are raising fears over a massive quake. But scientists argue about whether these quakes are connected. Relatives of killed Honduran activist Berta Cáceres are requesting for the trial to be postponed. They say the public minister hasn't disclosed all of the information regarding the crime. On Friday, the court has to decide on a hearing to present new evidence. Cáceres was killed in March 2016, defending her territory from a hydroelectric plant. 9 people have been arrested in connection to the murder.
We're asking the public minister to deliver all the information we've been asking for months. Until now, we haven't received it. That's why the hearings have to be postponed.
Meanwhile, indigenous leaders are denouncing inconsistencies in Cáceres' case.
Just before the trial for the assassination of activist Berta Cáceres begins, one of her daughters, accompanied by social leaders, said that she has been denied access to information about the details of the investigation of the assassination of her mother.
This process has developed among great irregularities in the investigation managed by the public ministry that has monopolized the investigation and denied malfeasance in the process, but refusing to let us know what theories are being used and the information that supports the investigations. However, we have always unanimously built theories to determine the individual responsibility of each person.
The trial for the death of the human rights defender Berta Cáceres will occur in September, but the public ministry refuses to give information about the development and investigation prior to the confirmation of what evidence will be used against the accused.
People linked to the Honduran army and energy companies are the cause of the manipulation of access to information, which have been denied 36 times in the case. The public ministry has also 4 outstanding judicial orders. The Honduran courts have ordered the dissemination of information, but it has continually been repudiated. Meanwhile, insensible excuses are being communicated.
For human rights organizations in Guatemala, it is worrying that an emblematic case is being handled with irregularities. The activist groups fear that the death of Berta Cáceres will remain in impunity and that the trend of not probing the murders of human rights defenders and indigenous leaders that has been unleashed in the past weeks will be followed.
Entonces creo que nuestra preocupación es eso, es el número de personas.
Then I think that is our concern, the number of human rights defenders. This year we have seen 19 murders. Many of those correspond to people who were part of the indigenous communities defending their territory and natural resources.
Territorio y los bienes naturales que les pertenecen.
Activists say the Berta Cáceres case is not only a symbol of the regional struggles in defense of indigenous territories, but is also recurrent in other areas, such as the assassination of those who defend natural resources and lead resistance movements.
Argentinian police have raided the homes of former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. They are searching for evidence on a corruption case during her term. The Senate unanimously approved the raids. Fernández de Kirchner is now a senator and voted in favor of the raids. She denies any wrongdoing. More than a dozen elite businessmen and former government officials have been arrested so far. Meanwhile, Fernández de Kirchner's supporters have gathered outside her apartment in Buenos Aires. They say she is a victim of political persecution because of her achievements.
She was the only one who gave us rights, who gave us jobs, our children had a school, and above all, we had a future.
She gave bread to the poor, gave work to the poor, continued to give work to workers and retirement to retirees.
9 judges of the Constitutional Court in Ecuador have been dismissed. The decision was made by the Transitory Citizens Participation and Social Control Council. The council says the justices were removed because they didn't act independently while appointing judges in 2012. Many critics, including former President Rafael Correa, said the decision violates the Constitution. In another development in Ecuador, the government is to leave the Bolivarian Alliance for the People of Our America, or ALBA. Foreign Minister Jose Valencia says the government wants to maintain its independence. ALBA was founded in 2005 by Cuba and Venezuela as a progressive alternative to the proposed free trade agreement of the Americas. And on Sunday, Colombians will be voting in an anti-corruption referendum. It is the first popular consultation in the country's history.
People will vote on 7 questions aimed at saying yes to political transformation and no to corruption. Citizens will cast their vote to decide on a series of reforms to boost transparency and toughen corruption sentences. Among them, the most pressing are cutting congressmen and high official wages, assuring jail sentences for corruption cases, barring condemned officials from occupying a public seat again, and revealing politicians' properties and income. Over 4 million signatures were collected before the referendum was approved. Boosted by the Colombian Green Alliance Party, this initiative aims to call all citizens to support the fight against corruption beyond personal ideologies.
4 million citizens have raised their voice to the anti-corruption measures that the Congress has so far rejected. Congressmen don't want to give up their privileges to high wages, to illegally awarded contracts, and to avoid strong punishments for corruption charges. That's why we Colombians are voting for and changing with the referendum.
With 84 votes, the Senate approved the referendum. Organizations are campaigning for people to vote yes on all 7 questions. The referendum needs a minimum of 12 million votes to be approved. That is 1/3 of the electoral census. But campaigners actually want 15 million Colombians to vote.
We all need to say yes in all 7 questions because we are the ones who need to defend our pockets and recover all the money lost because of corruption. Otherwise, politicians will increase taxes and reduce pensions to cover the financial hole.
There is no doubt that this referendum is a historic milestone in this country.
But some have said members of the ruling Democratic Center Party opposed the consultation, although President Iván Duque has asked them to support the referendum.
We need to support some proposals no matter where they come from, when they are useful for the country. For that reason, I've asked my party to support the referendum, and we're going to campaign for it, so all Colombians join the fight against corruption.
However, some members of Duque's party, among them former President and Senator Álvaro Uribe, say the referendum is just populist. Meanwhile, opposition parties are criticizing Duque for what they say is his lack of involvement.
President Duque called all mayors to support the anti-corruption referendum, so we can see if our president is truly on the side of those who fight corruption.
Corruption has traditionally been pointed out as one of the country's main problems. In 2017, Colombia only scored 37 points out of 100, 0 being very corrupt and 100 very transparent. That's according to Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. It remains below the world's average of 43 points.
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. A Colombian left-wing militant has been found dead. Jefferson Andres Arevalo was found in the municipality of Puerto Rico days after he was kidnapped. It's been reported that a group of armed men stormed into his place and kidnapped him. They also sexually abused his wife. Social organizations are asking President Ivan Duque for the state to take responsibility. The Council of State in Colombia has held the state responsible for a bomb attack that took place in 2003. Our correspondent has the story.
These images shocked Colombia in 2003. A car bomb attack carried out by the FARC killed 36 people and left 198 injured, a case in which the State Council found the state responsible.
This has to do with the nature of the damages caused. The activities carried out in Club El Nogal, where the attack happened, could have influence in the armed conflict and how this affected the population.
Investigations found that at the moment of the attack, an institutional meeting was taking place. Former Minister of Defense Marta Lucía Ramírez and former Minister of Interior Fernando Londoño were there. Judges say their presence put civilians at risk.
Authorities had information regarding a possible attack north of capital Bogota. Evidence showed that the attack was targeting a club and that it was possibly Club El Nogal. Authorities didn't use this information to decide on preventive measures.
But expert Luis Carlos Domínguez considers the Colombian state should not be condemned.
The State Council has condemned the state to compensate the people who were victims of this criminal attack. But this is not what is happening with other thousands of people that were victims of clearer actions that were responsibility of the state.
The decision of the State Council does not acquit the FARC of their responsibility in the attack. Former members of the armed group involved in the attack will have to face justice in a court of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace.
We will appear before a court of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace. We will say the truth and we will accept the sanctions the court decides.
Former FARC members have said at the time paramilitary commanders were meeting with the government officials in the Club de Nogal. They said this is why they chose this place as a target.
Rights defenders are asking for a probe into the murder of 72 migrants in Mexico. The massacre happened in 2010 in the northern state of Tamaulipas. Victims' relatives and human rights organizations are urging for a truth commission to be set up. Ecuadorians, Salvadorians, Hondurans, Brazilians, and Guatemalan citizens were kidnapped and killed on a farm. They were on their way to the U.S. border.
Yes, we want a truth commission. We have already a proposal on how this commission should be formed.
8 years and we are still waiting. We are still waiting for what all the families hope for, justice.
Members of social movements in Argentina are taking to the streets for the second day. They are angry over President Mauricio Macri's economic policies.
Their message is, we must stop the adjustments. Social organizations are demanding for social rights and guarantees after huge economic adjustment policies implemented by President Mauricio Macri.
There is absolute silence on the discussion regarding social budget. We want them to at least repair a small part of the damage made to our neighborhoods, where new popular kitchens are opened each day, where there is no development and where families can even afford one meal.
50 organizations block different streets and access points in the capital Buenos Aires and also in some other cities. The demonstrators are asking for solutions for the most vulnerable sectors of the society, those who are starving because of these financial policies.
We're witnessing the slow death of society. It is unbelievable to see how neighborhoods decay, moving backwards to 30 years ago. We just want to discuss our jobs, but the government won't do it. And each time, more groups join the fight.
Y creemos que es un momento de poner las barbas en remojo y que cada uno ponga de su parte.
Workers and human rights organizations participated in these protests. They presented a formal letter rejecting the latest progression against social protest and the destructive consequences of the IMF agreements.
The truth is, this is our limit. We can't take it anymore. Our salaries are not enough. We will continue fighting.
Entramos en una situación, digamos, muy compleja en Argentina.
We are living a very difficult situation in Argentina. This model is based on strict repression and persecution against the opposition.
Se sostiene con nada más que con represión,
Still, the government continues with its brutal monetary reforms. And once again, the people say they won't give up and will keep fighting to defend their rights and dignity.
Elsewhere in Argentina, protesters have blocked some entrances to Buenos Aires. A large mobilization of people are protesting against a lack of social aid from the government and the agreements with the IMF.
We are at Pueyrredón Bridge, one of the main entrances to Argentina's capital, where social movements have mobilized to demand the government respect for social rights and to reject the agreements made with IMF. All along the country, there were mobilizations like this one, that ask for subsidies to keep open public kitchens, that support Argentina's poorest. There were 50 other protests like this one, and the government responded with an increase of security officers who have been repressing demonstrators. These protests show the difficult situation lived in the country, caused by adjustment policies and a lack of social aid coming from Mauricio Macri's government, who has said that the measures will not only continue, but increase in accordance with the deal struck with IMF.
As Edgardo Esteban reporting there. Students and police have clashed in Chile's capital, Santiago. Students are angry about a youth labor law by the government. Riot police have used water cannon and tear gas to disperse protesters. The bill is currently being discussed in Parliament. The government says it will boost youth employment, but students argue that it strips away basic workers' rights.
We don't want the law because its content will only make the working rights of young people more precarious.
Meanwhile, Chilean politicians and human rights groups are calling for a group of judges to be dismissed. The Supreme Court justices released 7 people convicted of crimes against humanity. They are also former agents of Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship.
They say they felt they had no choice but to resort to violence, just as the dictator they defended did for 17 years. With their banners in hand, they came to the Court of Justice from within the wealthiest city districts to demand the liberation of suppression agents from the Augusto Pinochet era.
I consider that it is a noble cause to defend our military leaders.
They argue that the justices failed to review International Convention on Human Rights law and enabling impunity. It is a decision that the opposition seeks to reverse.
To reduce or make ineffective a sentence at those levels ultimately means impunity in matters of crime against humanity, as genocide, as war crimes are prohibited by the international order. With this decision, the elements that are substantial to the judiciary power are being broken.
There are 10 congressmen, including a representative of the Christian Democracy Party that supported Pinochet's strike against Salvador Allende. This is in crisis with the Sebastián Piñera government's controversial appointment of Luis Castillo as Health Deputy Secretary.
I'm appealing to my colleagues to be consistent with our principles and that in matters of human rights we unite to condemn all action of any entity of the state that seeks to downplay human rights.
Impunity for all victims' families, if legitimized, would mean there is a risk of genocide all over again.
When you hear the options of congressmen, that this is the involvement of an arm of the state in relation to the autonomy of the other. We wish this logic existed back in the dictatorship to censor the thousands of writ of amparo that the judiciary never accepted.
The legal mechanism is still in progress. It will be voted on, and if approved, 5 legislators will be randomly selected to review that request.
Peru's Congress has suspended Yesenia Ponce for 4 months over a false resume. The congresswoman of the right-wing Fuerza Popular reportedly paid 10,000 soles to a director of a high school she didn't attend. The sanction recommended by the Ethics Committee was supported by 96 votes, with 1 vote against. The United Nations Special Commission on Drugs has published a report on coca cultivation in Bolivia. Our correspondent has the story.
The report from the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime says that there has been an increase in coca cultivation in Bolivia in the last year.
Between 2016 and 2017, the coca cultivation has seen an increase of 1,400, from 23,100 to 24,500 hectares. That means a 6% increase.
But the government has said despite the increase, this report confirms that everything is under control.
Even though the prices have increased, the market is still manageable. Fortunately, in Bolivia, this price rise has not led to overproduction.
The report highlights the situation in Bolivia and compared it with other coca-producing nations in the region.
If we compare the statistics in other countries, for example in Colombia, the crop cultivation area has increased from 146,000 to 214,000 hectares. Comparing to Bolivia, these numbers are incomparable.
The law in Bolivia recognizes 22,000 hectares of land used for coca cultivation, legal for traditional use. In 2009, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration was expelled from the country from meddling in internal affairs, to make sure there is no external interference in the fight against drug trafficking in the country.
At least 135 people have been taken to hospital due to toxic air pollution in Chile. People fell ill in 2 cities in the country. The Interior Minister has declared a yellow alert emergency in the communities. The National Petroleum Company and the state-owned copper mining company Codelco, both in the area, are denying any connection. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a few minutes to take a look at some other news from around the world.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. A team of journalists in 25 locations around the world. 3 broadcasts to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. As promised, time to bring you other stories from around the world.
Scott Morrison is now Australia's new Prime Minister after Malcolm Turnbull was ousted by his party. Members of the Liberal Party began to lose confidence in Turnbull due to his unpopularity in opinion polls. With an upcoming election and defeats in by-elections, MPs began to rebel against Turnbull's leadership. Morrison, who was the former Treasurer, beat Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton in the leadership contest. The new Prime Minister has confirmed that there are no plans for an early election. An anti-immigrant rally was countered by anti-fascists in Italy on Thursday. Police were on hand to defuse tensions between the two groups in Catania. Last week, Italy rescued just under 200 migrants from an overcrowded boat off the coast of Lampedusa. The government has been pressing Malta to take some of the refugees, but they have refused. Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has threatened to send some of them to Libya if other European countries refuse to take them in. A South African man has apologised after video of him being racist towards black people went viral. Adam Katzavalos is the husband of a senior Nike executive who were forced to close stores after the footage emerged. In the video, Katzavalos is seen on a beach and described it as heaven on earth due to the absence of black people, and used the term kafir, a word used during apartheid. He now says he's sorry for the unspeakable pain he caused.
The Spanish government has approved the exhumation of late dictator Francisco Franco's remains. 43 years after his death, the government has finally approved the removal as a mark of respect for Franco's victims, who are also buried at the site. The construction of the building was commissioned by Franco. Once the exhumation is completed, his family will have to decide where to bury him. Well, on that note, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for Telesur English. I'm Emike Omolu, and thank you again for watching.